Thank you so much. I feel so honored to be here. It's always very interesting for me to receive instruction as to what it is that I'm supposed to discuss and deliver at the moment. We're going to talk about a couple things today, but I was asked to just share some information with you. I do want to make one request, though. Can you hear me now? Okay. Is there some way we can support her in hearing me? The lady in the back, she can't. I just ask that while I'm talking that no one please snap a photograph of me. Okay. Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. I do want to thank Dr. Bodice, and I've always heard such wonderful things about him, and I'm just real blessed to just see such an elegant, human, divine specimen. So thanks again, Dr. Bodice. One of the tasks, a personal task of mine, is to be the best that I can be. So on my quest to learn as much about myself as possible, I found out some very awesome things. There's a tremendous amount of information available to us, and truly, next to the divine life force energy that has been given to you, it is paramount that you invest as much time and finances and whatever else you have in acquiring information. And the reason why is that when you begin to do the research and unleash the information in your mind, especially as melanin-dominant or Africans, you will be awed at recognizing that truly you are God and God essence. And this is extremely most important. As I begin to look at the scientific research and the data that's actually been studied on us, it's amazing what it is that I have found out about myself. Perhaps some of you are not very much aware of my work, but I am an immortalist. I understand that aging is a dis-ease process, so is death. I understand that any decline in prime function is also dis-ease, menopause, climateric, aging. These are dis-ease states, and they are not natural phenomena that the human being has been created to experience. The more melanin an individual has, when you begin to do the research, you recognize that it really is an absurd experience. Because just by the chemistry, the physiology of the body, etc., this is something that, unless under total ignorance and a total resistance to actually accept and maintain what you have, do you actually even undergo those kinds of experiences. What is also so awesome is that when we are ready, because we do have these wonderful anatomical and neurological structures, we can begin to regenerate ourselves at any particular time. I talked about this on a radio show not long ago in New York. Yes, you can regenerate your spinal cord, you can regenerate your brain, you can grow new limbs, new organs, whatever it is that you choose to regenerate. However, everything requires, first of all, an acknowledgement that this is possible, and then secondly, to find out what precisely you need to do to actualize the experience. So anytime you begin to collect thoughts in your mind that things are impossible, that experiences are not experiences for you for reasons of primarily inadequacy, then do understand that obviously by universal law, those things cannot be in your realm. When you begin to evaluate your belief systems and the foundation upon which you define yourself, if you are holding on to belief systems that just by the thought of them create discomfort, poverty, what you can't afford, what you can't do, why you have to continue to be on jobs that create discomfort for you every day, understand that by my definition on a scientific basis, that is a sentence to your own hell. These are all experiences only based on your belief system and what it is that you are allowing yourself to entertain. The universe, and especially in this dimension, which is known as a holographic dimension, mercurial, very much so, a mirroring dimension, whatever you believe creates your reality. So therefore, when you have belief systems that immediately create discomfort, you have to understand that it's only by your choosing to continue to think that thought that you create your own discomfort. It is only what we call a relative reality. It is not an absolute reality. So when I talk about absolute realities, I'm actually talking about the fact that there are laws that permeate all dimensions, or as it is quoted in the Bible, rulership over all mansions in my mother, father's house. Those are absolute laws. And any dimension you're able to move yourself into, you will find that it is requested that you have to obey those. But on a relative sense, relative reality has really been cloaked and has been perpetrated by social, cultural norms, okay, which are chemical realities that are actually written upon your genetic structure. Now, this becomes very awesome because as you begin to look at your gene pool, this is why you have to begin to start studying yourself. Many of the values, many of the belief systems that we have are obviously 300,000 years old. It has been discovered that Lucy's genes are actually 500,000 years old. Some interesting things will come out about her because it'll be also revealed later on that she really didn't even originate from this planet. Okay, this begins to be how awesome that is. But definitely in the Aborigines, when they look at their genetic count, which is actually 42 plus 2 chromosomes, okay, because you have to understand that we all don't have the same chromosome makeup. There's 42 plus 2, 44 plus 4, and 46 plus 2. So depending upon the chromosome number that you have and also the number of chromosomes that you are actually able to activate depends and will determine your reality and the capacity that you have to master this dimension. Okay? This is why if you begin to really do the study, there's really 7 races on this planet that are divided based on their chromosome number. The Aborigines are really the original chromosomes that at least Caucasians have identified, which have the 42 plus 2 makeup. And they do contain at least 300,000 years of information in their chromosomes. Unfortunately, they have been one of the groups of people that have been researched on most intensely for that reason. So when you think of Jurassic Park, you can also think of the Aborigines. Okay? And it's been an awesome thing that they have actually gone through for the Europeans to actually unlock as much as they have about DNA and the genetic code. We have 12 sets of double helixes, not 2. Most people, however, don't even activate 1/4 of the one single double helix, which is why they actually are experiencing the kind of life that they have. Limitation, lack of any type, discomfort is not your destiny. And do not ever allow a person to indoctrinate that with you. If you are experiencing it, it is because you have a relative reality that is not in alignment with absolute truth. This is one of the things that I stress because truly we are all potential gods and goddesses. That is only a state of existence that you personally have to earn, but the potential was already given to you. And not until you are ready to do the personal work and begin to understand who you are, can you begin to activate the 7 levels of brain function. Let me tell you about this a little bit. There's 7 levels of brain function. Most people are what we call trapped in either first, second, or third circuit. They never move beyond the third circuit. And it's very interesting because the social structure of the Western world, if you do not pay attention and know who you are, will lock you into it. Okay, the African race is actually the foundation for the economic system in America. So you have to understand how awesome that is. So every time you drive downtown and you see these big buildings, etc., they are built on your back. How can somebody tell you that you don't have money to do it what you want to when you're actually the foundation for which these buildings stand? So do not accept this, but what we have not mastered is accountability and appreciation for what we have. Because one absolute universal law is that whatever you focus on expands, and whatever you appreciate will be multiplied and given double unto you. So it is a travesty when we begin to go up and down the street and see that we do not respect and honor what we have. Because when you do that, it automatically must double. That is a universal, absolute law. So there are many things that are happening with us that truly are of our own creation. And I think it's very important that we begin to pull in our energies, tunnel in, and really begin to examine how much discomfort, lack, and limitation is really of our own creation, not of anybody else's. It's very important that you give all power to yourself and stop disseminating it to any particular race of person, to any particular institution, to any type of political science or lack of an educational. None of that has anything to do with whether you're going to actualize your God or God essence. I brought some things here, and there's one book that I obviously left at home, but it's no problem. We have a 3-volume set here. Well, first of all, let me just go back to just get you hooked up. 7 circuits. First circuit is brain stem. It is equivalent to the reptilian brain. Now, one of the things that is known by zoologists and basic biologists is that when an ovum is fertilized, okay, on this planet, everything starts out the same. Okay, it gets heavy because all of, quote, the alchemical sciences now are brought into this, because there are numbers that we are honoring that really don't exist. Okay, there are states of existence that we get locked into that really are only to be transitory. So we have to begin to start paying very, very close attention. But the point being is that, first of all, brainstem activity is the same as reptilian brain. Okay? Now, if you pay any attention to the animals, and they're wonderful teachers because the animals are here on this planet to teach us the solution to any problem we might have. This is why the Native American Indians were so awesome and had the answers to solutions. And it's very interesting as to their unwillingness to accept what was before their very eyes that actually caused their own extinction. You have to understand that the belief systems and the perceptions that the Native American Indians decided to fall into predestined them to extinction. It was just karmic that it happened to come through the Caucasians. Okay, and this is very interesting because when we begin to look at the destiny and the future of the African, we have also set ourselves up in the same position. So when we begin to see a fertilized egg multiply, as it first develops, and if you put all these different levels of animals zoologically together as far as their ovum development, you cannot tell the same at a particular stage until that ovum develops beyond that point, or either it will actually develop into that particular animal. So you have to understand how awesome that is, because that means in here, you know and have the capacity to actualize any particular activity that any animal on this planet can execute. You've got to understand that, and you have to understand then where those cells, that information is logged into your brain. Because when you understand where it is in your brain, once you're able to actualize the thought, you can activate that part of the brain to allow you to experience and execute that particular activity. So obviously Magic Johnson and all these other people that have these great feats, they can leap around like, what are those called, praying mantis and etc. That's all part of actually the structure that's prevalent and present in their brain. This is no just, haphazard thing that they have. This is quite physiologically present. But there's something known that's very interesting that's known as conscious and unconscious, mastery or competence. Okay, we can be unconsciously competent, and it is our responsibility to be consciously competent. Okay, because unconscious competency comes from the right brain. Okay, however, when you are asked to elucidate that step by step at the same degree and the same state of accuracy, unless you can identify each stage and then impart that to your left brain, your degree of competency will vary. Now, so you have to understand what I'm really describing, because what I'm really describing to you is a feat of left and right brain hemisphere integration that is common in the Orientals. That's their capacity. They have the capacity, once they are exposed to something intuitively, to be able to understand precisely, left brain-wise, how that was created and reproduce innumerable reproductions that only they can really tell you what the original is. And that comes from integration of the left and right hemispheres through the corpus callosum development and a few other neurologic areas that have become developed because of their cultural lifestyle. So brainstem is reptilian. So whatever a reptile can do, you can do. Now see, that's awesome when you recognize that that's not even in your head yet. We're talking about brainstem. We haven't even got into the brain yet. Okay. Now it's very interesting when you begin to also notice the reptiles, because the reptiles primarily stay by themselves. You do not see reptiles together except for two reasons: for defense and eating. Okay, so we understand then what the behavior, the personality of a reptilian personality is going to be. Okay, and that's awesome. What does the state of consciousness of the reptile deal with? What is safe and what is not? Those are the two main perceptions that determine their entire life. Now see, that's awesome. Okay, because that lets me know that when I go to visit somebody's house and it has more locks and grids and things on it, okay, than Fort Knox, I automatically understand what level of brain function they're primarily actualized in and where they are stuck in what circuit. Okay, this is awesome. And what's so interesting is that they have also identified substances, chemicals, that will actually keep you in these particular states. Okay? Now, second circuit is the insect. Brain capacity of the insect is second circuit, and that is the medulla. Okay, right in the entrance of the magnum. Insects come together and work as a group because they understand that by group effort, they are able to actualize a quality of life that is more comfortable than if they did it themselves. Okay? However, it's very clear that that insects have no emotional bond to one another. That is to say that once the agreement is made for whatever the act is going to be done, if you abort the activity before the act is done, you are killed. And you can buy an ant farm and observe that. Okay, when it's understood that there's food to be brought in to the nest, and an ant goes out, and there's still food left, and this ant has no food, they kill him. His head is taken off. Okay, so it's understood that it becomes very interesting that second circuit function is that we have individuals who interact with other people for the benefit of a increased quality lifestyle and also to give themselves meaning. Now see, this is very interesting because you get hooked into second circuit. That means that your sense of self, your personal desires, the things that you might want to do for yourself will all become subordinate to whatever the group says. And I see that so many times with people dealing with the church. They're so busy in the church, their home falls down on the ground. Okay, they're so busy on their job, their home falls down on the ground, along with their health. Whatever it is that you are deciding that defines who you are to be able to what you think have a higher quality lifestyle is stuck in second circuit. Okay? Now, it's very interesting because this is where alcohol works. Okay? And alcohol basically, well, let me take that back. Alcohol is more so first circuit. Okay? We have drugs like heroin, etc., that work on second circuit. Okay? Third circuit deals with the intellect. These are individuals that if you can't read it, if it hasn't been researched or there's some type of documentation from someone else who said it, then you don't believe it. Okay, this is the intellect and this is the avian. This is bird's brain mentality. Okay? Now, that is a very controlling mechanism. Okay, and this is where cocaine comes in. Okay, because these are the individuals that get super ego tripped, and once they think they know something, they can do whatever they want to, etc., and do this over and over again. Okay, but this deals with the intellect. If I can't read it, if it can't be proven to me, etc., based on whatever I think proof is, that it doesn't exist. Third circuit, and many of us are caught into that. That's why we feel, for example, that we don't amount to much if we don't have whatever society says is important for you to be an educated person. Now, we know with the number of universities on this planet and with the problems on this planet that obviously having a degree means nothing. And it's amazing to me to see the number of Africans who still continue to barge their way into these institutions looking for answers when it's demonstrated every minute on CNN that they don't have them. Okay, this is very, very awesome. So when we understand that there is information there, but you have to understand that there is a state of consciousness that one has to go to get the information, okay, and be able to come out with it with very little mental distortion, because there's a big aspect of education that definitely deals with the implantation of social morals and norms for larger economic and political use at a later date. Now, what begins to get so interesting is that when we begin to move, and so I just want to say that Third Circuit is cerebellum. Fourth Circuit, now we finally move into the occipital aspect of the brain. Finally have gotten in up here. That is Fourth Circuit, and Fourth Circuit deals with the emotions. This is the capacity to truly know kinesthetically what's happening anywhere in the world. Now, I think that the Western world is very, very interesting because Fourth Circuit is something that is condemned, literally, in this society for you to function on. Okay? I mean, Tina Turner talks about what does love have to do with it? So she immediately tells you that your decision should be made from Third Circuit, not Fourth. Okay? Because you have to understand that Fourth Circuit deals directly with heart and knowingness and the center where the divine intelligence really resides. The Native American Indians can tell you that decisions should be made from the heart. After the brain gives you the information, the final decisions are made from the heart space. Never from the head, never from Third Circuit. But when we have individuals who now are incapable of expressing their true emotions, no camaraderie with others, lack of intimacy, etc., they are truly locked out of Fourth Circuit. Now, this is interesting. It's only one drug that they talk about that has a capacity to immediately move you into the Fourth Circuit, and that happens to be marijuana. However, the capacity for most people to actually get pure marijuana, because in this country, as much as they can, they douse it with something known as paraquat that immediately is toxic to the Fourth Circuit of the brain. Mm-hmm. So if you're dealing with that here, you are actually poisoning yourself and bringing about destruction because of what they hook on to the THC molecule. But the capacity to finally move into the Fourth Circuit where you do allow your feelings to be your guide as to who's who and what it is to do is very paramount to be able to access womanhood, manhood, kingship, queenship, and then finally God and God essence. So then moving into the Fifth Circuit deals with pure intuition. Intuition, if you look in the Webster's Dictionary, is pure knowingness. See, most of us have the subconscious definition, and that was truly interestingly created, that intuition is not a fact. It is a fact. It actually is the capacity to perceive past, present, and future at the same time. So when a person is able to intuit, that's the highest level of knowingness. Sixth Circuit, when we actually move into temporal lobes, etc., where you have extra sensory hearing. You can hear anything, any place in the world and in other dimensions. This is also where you can begin to see into other dimensions, etc. And then finally moving into Sixth Circuit is activation of the frontal lobes, where depending upon your physiologic structure, you can access and utilize the entire electromagnetic spectrum as we know it. Now, it's very interesting, and a distorted perception of what I'm talking to you about was elucidated in Lawnmower Man. Okay, any of you that actually saw Lawnmower Man, it's a very profound movie, because actually what they did is externally give this, what we call idiot savant, the neurotransmitters, which means that they gave him the liquid aspect of the thoughts that are necessary to activate all of these different levels of the brain. Now, do understand what I'm saying, because I'm telling you that every thought that you have is a chemical reality in your blood. and therefore determines the entire quality, not only of your physical body, but of your entire life. Because we are now talking about electromagnetic attraction. So these neurotransmitters have been isolated for the last 20 years, and especially the ones on emotion. There's a particular neurotransmitter for joy, peace, harmony, love, the frequency of vibration of the atom, the content of the chemistry, the electromagnetic spectrum that it activates has all been identified. It's in the literature. So therefore, it's understood that exposing a person to a particular sound, particular color, to a particular frequency of light actually will create neurotransmitters that will immediately put a person in a particular mindset of thought. So yes, depending upon your environment and who's manipulating it, you can be put into depression. You can actually be put into suicide thoughts. You can actually be put into violent thoughts. But if you do not understand this, then you're just a victim. And you will carry out these acts, and then you will then have a sociological reason to be prosecuted and incarcerated. So they've been doing these kind of experiments for a very, very, very long time. And it's very interesting that most of it has been done on us. The prisons have been main human guinea pig areas, and so have been the Head Start centers and the public schools. Because the first part of my book talks about the tens of thousands of children whose blood has been taken to actually elucidate the growth curves of the African child. So mothers who are so willing to take their children to these areas to get their blood drawn, to have their children have substances introduced into their bodies that they have no idea what it is. Okay, whatever it is that they allege, have no idea of the entity that they are actually feeding and what it might do to you later. See, it's very important that if you're going to be in a technological society, you must be technologically astute. Why don't you know what the Hubble telescope is? Why don't you know what it's looking at? Why don't you know what McDonnell aircraft is sending up every week? Why don't you know about the actual space station? Why don't you understand what's happening with the faults on the planet? Why don't you know that they already have maps of the United States where over 1/3 of the land mass is gone? You must know that, because you can't sit up and talk about, I'm going to go to school next year for the next 2 years and get a master's degree when the city ain't going to even be here. What are you talking about? Okay, you have to understand what your purpose is, and you have to understand that as long as you're committed to Earth, you've got to have something to stand on. Unless you've activated 6 or 7 circuits, where then you can fly. Doesn't matter. Okay, but if you haven't done that yet, then for you to then learn how to do that, you've got to then have a stable foundation and understand where those areas of stability and instability are. Now, that says then, what is the priority? Because when we actually talk about existence, that means that, of course, you have to have a place to stay and food to eat, but the next thing you have to have is information. And you have to make sure that what you do invest in as far as food and clothing is appropriate. Most of the clothing and the food that Africans buy is totally worthless and definitely clogs up their bodies. Now that's awesome when you understand that you wear clothes that are dangerous for you. Okay, but again, you have to know who you are. These 3 books I have, the Melanotropic Peptides, Volume 1, 2, and 3 by Mac E. Hardley. These are volumes of books that were actually collected works all over the world that were finally sent to Mr. Hadley from the Department of Anatomy at the University of Arizona, Tucson, Arizona. Now there is a club of scientists that do nothing but do research on the melanin molecule. And if you're not in that club, then if you want to have access to the information, they will send it to you for a cost. These 3 volumes of books cost $608. This is what I invested my money in. Because, see, I understand that if I do not know who I am, then there's someone who does know who I am that can definitely alter my plans. So I have to know as much about myself as possible so that if there are any areas that I am sensitive to within myself, then I know what to do about that and to stay on guard so that that will always be a side of myself that I protect. Now, the question is, I think it's very interesting that obviously this is a calculated means of you not getting the information when they charge you $200 a volume. Okay, however, that is only a calculated means if you're not getting the information if you truly believe that lack is the natural state of being. Because it is not. Abundance is the natural state of affairs on this planet. And so that means then that the Creator who made everything can supply you with whatever you need unlimitedly. And definitely when you have asked for information for you to be the best you can be, the Creator will deny you nothing. So then when we begin to, first of all, jump up and holler about what we can't afford as far as information, immediately is because you are locked into first, second, or third circuit. And not even the third, because people in third circuit will at least buy this information. So you are in second circuit, which is truly being the victim of this society, which means that you will never know mastery, and you will never have a high-quality life because you are not willing to, first of all, know universal laws. That should be the first thing that is taught in all of our school systems, knowing that you can never, ever be enslaved. So then why do we sit and continuously send our kids to learn nonsense that eventually will be used against them, perhaps, to totally bring about their destruction? What good is a PhD when somebody can actually continuously beam of light on you and drive you crazy? And do understand that that is a reality. Now, if you are activated to Fifth Circuit, you would know that somebody was doing that, because your intuition would let you know, based on your environment, that something was not right and lead you to the source. Okay, but now if nobody's ever taught you that you have 7 circuits in the brain that you have to activate and teach you about your neuroanatomy and teach you how to eat and teach you truly how to learn to master each one of those circuits, yes, you will be destroyed and have spent 20, 25 years in school and nobody will ever know what happened to you. So true enough, a brain is a terrible thing to waste.
Yes,
and
indeed.
when we go up into these public schools, as they are, we understand that they're wasting them. So we have some of the greatest minds available. Why is it that our schools are not addressing that information? And it goes back again to the woman. And I have a real dedication to ensuring that as many women as possible begin to understand who they are. If you heard me on the radio show earlier today, in my sex workshops, I teach that the woman is a creatrix. She is the physical embodiment of the divine life force energy. The man is the creator, and he is the physical embodiment of the divine laws through which that life force energy is directed and formed. So if you understand what that means then that in this dimension, the feminine energy must always exist in everybody's life for them to continue to exist, because she is the emanation of the life force energy. Wherever she is not, there is no life. And you can walk into a structure where there's no women, and unless the brother has harnessed a tremendous amount of creative energy himself, you can immediately tell it. First of all, it's cold, it's barren, you can always tell that. And where she is, etc., the brother is always able to have unlimited power in creativity. So it's not coincidental that Europeans never, ever assign a male in a leadership position that is not connected to a source of life. Now, you can check that out as to what's happening in South Africa and know where that's going. And don't ever let anybody insult you like that to do that. If somebody basically ego is such that they feel that they can't have a wife and they want to actually talk about leading you, then they are not the one. Because they must have the life force energy to continuously have the energy to direct and create. Now, it becomes very interesting when we begin to actually look at women who don't want the life force energy. Now that's awesome, because when they are constantly chasing down means of birth control that they know nothing about, if you did the studies on norplants, you would not want that in an animal, let alone shoved up your arm. When I was in training and in residency, it was an insult to give a human being Depo-Provera. We used that only for institutionalized women who were Down syndrome and profoundly mentally retarded, because we felt that it was better that if they were abused by any of the attendants, that pregnancy, etc., would be far more traumatic, and so therefore the end result of Depo-Provera was not near as dangerous as somebody who's profoundly retarded getting pregnant. Now, on the main magazine, the main African magazine, the pharmaceutical companies have full-page advertisements for you to come in and get your Depo-Provera like you're a stock animal once every 4 months. Now, if you are a thinking woman, you would immediately demand that that not ever be allowed to be flashed in your face as something that you're going to buy. Because they don't have that in Lear magazine. They don't have that in Mademoiselle. They don't have that in the Red Book. They don't have that in Young Mothers. I think that's interesting. And Ortho Novum has just as much money to advertise in there as they do in Essence and Ebony. So when you understand then and do the research to let you know that the scientists don't even think this is even worth giving to humans, Norplants were the first means of population birth control ever researched on African women. They went to Africa and researched this on 1 million African women before they brought it here. Because they understood that if they were going to make something distinctly for melanin-dominant individuals, it had to be tested on them. So they took it there for that to happen. Now, in these books, this is very interesting because all this is research on melanin by individuals all over the world that don't have any. All of the contributors come from Western Caucasian countries where they don't have any melanin, but they've dedicated all this time and money to doing research on something they don't have. It's very profound because here the last volume, volume 3, says mechanisms of action and biomedical applications. Now, one of the very interesting biomedical applications that they have is the capacity to take melanin-stimulating hormone and give it to random animals that have very little melanin, and it makes them black. Now, I thought that was awesome. But now they have elucidated that melanin-stimulating hormone, which is made in the pineal gland, there's many different types. There's an alpha, there's a delta, there's a lambda, and it's the alpha that is the most powerful. And it will take, as they say, a yellow rat, and once he is injected, turn him jet black permanently. So the little pheomelanin, okay, which deals from the yellow, orange range, etc., okay, now permanently becomes eumelanin. Now, see, you have to understand how awesome that is. Okay, because if you know anything about science and what's happening, see, that means now that if you're still stuck in second, third circuit, or even third circuit, there are going to be people that are going to be presented to you that you're not even going to understand what you're looking at. You're not even going to understand who's who because you do not understand what's actually happening with the capacity to manipulate tissue now. Okay, now you have to understand what is also so awesome is that because melanin is intelligent, it is always directly connected to neurons. Your skin is an external brain. That they recognize that they can take neuromelanin and tag it to a particular organ and then piggyback a substance on it, inject it into the body, and the melanin will not release that substance until it gets to that particular organ. Now, this is a new therapeutic treatment that they're going to now start delivering chemotherapeutic agents with. Now, where do you think they're getting all this melanin from? Hey. Now, that's very interesting. And I'll just let you do the research on that question. This brings me to why I began to try to introduce this information bit by bit into the community for a couple of reasons. Because when I began to understand the awesomeness of melanin, I also began to recognize that it is the solution to primarily all the problems that are on the planet now. But because the people that contain the most are locked in first and second circuit, they actually shut down the qualities of melanin and now have become the problem. So it's like awesome because it's like really diabetes. Okay, you are drowning in a sea of plenty. So you have to understand that with you having the greatest gifts, the blacker you are, the more gifted you are, the more awesome you are. And when you walk around here still thinking that you've been cursed and that you've got a problem, it is devastating. In these books, they talk about the immunogenetic potential of melanin. It is already known that AIDS cannot exist in the presence of melanin. They know that. It's the most awesome immunogenic substance on the planet. It is actually now being researched in a means for serum to actually treat AIDS. So therefore, when you see somebody that's black angling up to you talking about they have AIDS, that is not the issue with them. The issue is the fact that they are sitting up locked in first and second circuit mentality. So the treatment for them has to be someone that's going to elevate their state of consciousness. So, it's no need to run around hoping that they do X, Y. This person already has their own treatment. So as soon as they can give up the need to have self-hate and to feel that they're a victim and somebody else is holding them down, which they have found is very interesting, that when you think those thoughts, you create neurotransmitters that chelate the melanin molecule and shut down its activity. So every time you look in the mirror and feel that you are too black, that your hair is too nappy, that your nose is too wide, know that your destiny has been sabotaged. And you did it. So therefore, you have to ask yourself, why do you think that you are the wretched of the earth when your information is making big money for those people who wish they had it? Why are you going around talking about you have no money and that is somebody else is holding you back, etc., when you are the original God and goddess on the planet, if you would activate your brain? So it's time now that you begin to reallocate your funds. Every time you go to the store and buy a pop, you should pop yourself upside down. Every time you go and buy a cigarette, you should light it and stick it to your hand. Lit. Because you have no time to waste your money on such just outrageous stupidness when you don't know who you are. This is what you need to be putting your money on so that you can understand what it is that you need to actualize your greatness. Why are you buying $70 gym shoes when you do not have this basic book in your library? Why are you in need of driving $45,000 cars when you have no idea that you're still locked in Second Circuit and how to get out? These are the things that you have to look at. So it's ridiculous to talk about we can't afford anything. What we need to talk about is why do we have belief systems that keep us in the quality of life that we have. When you walk outside and see paper in the front of your house, bald dirt with no grass, paint running off everything, as a woman especially, you have to ask yourself, where is my creativity and where is my life force energy? Because truly where that flows, that kind of existence is impossible. So we have to begin to really ask ourselves why we continuously want to have belief systems that put us living in the quality that we're living in. And I can guarantee you it's because of the food that you eat and it's because of the thoughts that you think. It has been documented in this research that we Africans, because we have a well-developed external and internal circulatory system, and that because we are protein and fat sparing, cannot eat concentrated fats and proteins. So every time you put an animal in your body, you are getting ready to block off your stuff. It is a known fact that eating animal fat and protein, and especially chickens and fowl, will make your ovaries hard as a rock. When your ovaries get hard as a rock, your creativity is shut down. And this is why over 1 out of every 3 women with uterine fibroids has them. So you have to understand that when the woman's reproductive organs, which actually house the life force energy in the first chakra, are hard as a rock, yes, you'll have dirt flying up in your face, paint peeled off everything, and everything broke down and creeled to the side. Because the first chakra is blocked and the life force energy cannot radiate. So the reason why we are in the condition we're in has nothing to do with the money that the city will or will not give you. That means not a hill of beans. Because as long as you have a physical body that can stand and bend and reach, you can totally transform your environment. It has nothing to do with what they're doing. And so for you to get involved in politics and all that stuff is really a squandering of your life force energy when you recognize that you have not even begun to exhaust what you already have looking in the mirror every day at yourself. But when you start eating synthetic foods, you don't even know what's in these pops. You have no idea what's even in that mess? What's in it? Has anyone even done the research on that? See, this is what I'm talking about. We got to start using what little brain cells we've activated. What makes a pop? What's in it? How many teaspoons of sugar, and what does the sugar do? Okay, you want to try 16? And do you want to know that the first thing that it does is that 1 teaspoon of sugar totally immobilizes all of the white blood cells in your bloodstream for 3 to 4 hours? So now try 16 of them, multiplied times 4. See, this is the information that you should have. These books are only $2 or $3. So you have to ask yourself, if you consider yourself intelligent, why you don't know what is manipulating your environment. Why is it that they have pink street lights on your block and blue on the next? And then when you go to the suburbs, they're white. What do you know about these frequency of bulbs and what they're emanating? Do you know anything about that? Well, if you don't, then you got a problem. Because I guarantee you, you'll always have some health problems. How can you stand in the mirror and see your melanin actually fade off your face and not be concerned about that? What does that represent? These all have answers, and it's all been documented. But not unless you are willing to start supporting those institutions or people that will constantly bring you the information, then you are going to be lost at your own ignorance. Because you ignored yourself. That's what ignorance is. It's not being aware of the obvious. So anytime you can actually know what natinola is and not know what melanin is, you know that you're going out of the world backwards. Because anytime a person would dare to put something on them, to take away something, they don't even know what they're taking away. This is truly second circuit mentality. And you will be enslaved the rest of your life for that. Because they know how to basically pull your chain. So I brought these books intentionally because as far as I'm concerned, every household should have this. Okay, what these books need, however, are individuals who can translate it for you. Because, of course, that's another thing that they do. They actually put this in medical terms. Now, because the Creator creates everything that you need to be able to master and experience, we have individuals who can do this for you. Okay? And therefore, they have to take and sit down and read it and interpret it and think about it and then put it in a simplified form. You must not debate what they are asking you to do, asking you to give them for that information. You have to understand that Europeans will pay whatever is necessary for information about themselves because they understand that once they know about themselves, they can quadruple the price. And when you understand that abundance is a natural state of affairs, hell, what difference does it make how much you ask? Do you understand what I'm saying? So we have to stop undermining these individuals who have taken the time to translate and to give this information to us so that we don't have to waste our time doing that. That's not your purpose. That's our purpose. So if you're supposed to be the seamstress, you can be a seamstress with intelligence. If you're supposed to be a gardener, you can be the gardener with intelligence. Because there are other people who are specifically created to do this work. One of my biggest concerns is how we continuously want to be slaves. We continuously go to jobs that have no benefit and no future investment for us. Yet we have no clothes that fit, no shoes that fit. Our educational institutions, maybe once a month, they tell me on what's that, Negro History Month or something, the children might see somebody that looks like you. Otherwise, they're inundated continuously with the greatness of other races, etc. So how can they respect you when they come home and you ain't been nothing talked about at all about you? So, of course, we have to keep thinking about George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and all these other folks because you're not taught. And to me, it would make sense because if I was financing the school, I would definitely put in there what I wanted to have financed.
That's right.
And as a physician, when you go to the hospital, the standard of treatment and therapy and evaluation is not yours. Now, see, you have to understand that's awesome. And you women especially need to wake up to that. You keep running to these institutions and they keep seeing you as a white girl. Now, how are you going to actually ever get better when the treatment is for a white girl? Now, our whole bone structure, physiology, anatomy, and development is different than theirs. Normal hemoglobin for us is between 10 to 12. So that means if your hemoglobin is 10.5 to 11, you are normal. And so when they shove iron up in your face to make your tissues hard as a rock, you're the fool. Because you didn't know who you were. Now, for a white girl, that's the proper treatment. So now, why don't you know who you are? That you have to ask yourself that question. And why you continuously rely on institutions that refuse to see you as who you are and treat you as who you are, you have to ask that question. But truly, if I was Henry Ford and I had $70 million to put in an institution, and I was interested in my family and my children being treated, oh yes, I would always be the standard. Be no question about it. So if they had to pick me up off the street and roll my kids in, they were always going to be able to be the standard. Now, the key here is that we're looking at some false marketing. Because they put these signs up all around saying that they can help you, but they can't because they do not use your standard when you come in to get treated. Now, the Orientals know that, and the Eastern Indians know that. That's how come you don't see them up in there. They understand that. So when they need help, they have their own medical system. They don't even go up in there. I mean, they are that intelligent, they know that. So that means then that if you haven't then come together as a group of people and put your money together to build an institution, then now what are you going to do? Now, because you are so awesome, you have to understand that from the beginning, illness was not your destiny. So therefore, that means that should let you know that based on your own molecular structure, you are living a lifestyle that goes against you. So the first intelligent thing to do is to invest what in your environment are you bringing in there that constantly is not in your best interest. And 90% of the time, you can go to the kitchen and to the bathroom. And those are the two main places that you can find the culprit. Now, when you begin to eat properly and recognize that what's in your bathroom really should be in the kitchen, okay, then you'll find that you will not have to rely on these institutions. Because another universal law is that the universe, the creator, does not give you an experience that you can't master. So that means if you have a physical body, you are the physician. And you can basically make it or break it. And you have the brain power and wherewithal to be able to do that. So a physician then, if you might consult with him or her, is an individual that basically should understand how races and sexes do function and give you some recommendations that you can choose to follow. But the healing capacity is yours. And you're the one that is determining whether it is going to be activated or shut down at any particular time. There's none of that we can bestow upon you. So I really do ask you, we are giving a workshop here in Philadelphia. The Center for Universal Steps to Life is presenting a workshop here, a sex workshop. Now see, you have to understand now again, the African man and woman is the universal mother and father for all races on the planet. And the creator is the sexual energies. So you have to understand that. That when you actually want to talk about knowing the creator, the sexual energies are actually that life force energy that actually represents the creator. Now that might be very profound for many of us that have interest in religious indoctrinations, but if you're going to circumvent death and aging, you're going to have to get over it and deal with the truth. Okay? What do we do with this energy? It can transform, it can mutate, it can reproduce, it can heal, it can do all kinds of awesome things. But you have to begin to understand that sexuality and reproduction are not necessarily synonymous. And that to be able to control the size of one's family is an awareness, breathing relationship with self. It has nothing to do with anything outside of you. Except first you understanding who you are and then being able to elicit the proper breathing techniques. This is why in the ancient codices, etc., when writing finally became a reality, there was no such thing as unwanted children by men or by women, because men can control themselves where they don't ever have to impregnate anybody. This is not something they don't have control over. Right. And women have the capacity where they don't ever have to be able to be in a position to get pregnant. And there are multiple techniques for that. They have nothing to do with anything in the contraceptive area of the drugstore. But you have to begin to understand this and know it. There is a whole sacred science of totally being able to experience the Creator through sexuality. What is that about? In many cultures, the capacity to use the sexual energies to heal, which is a very rapid healing, is a sacred art that only certain men and women are even allowed to be taught because of the lifestyle that they have to live is so awesome. Because, see, they have to be able to be with the person, merge with them, and then to totally be able to separate themselves with no attachment. See, and you have to understand how awesome that is, because most people still have issues with their mama, their daddy. You know, they haven't gotten over their first rejection. So, I mean, these are all attachments. So if you still hanging on to that, there's no way that you can have sex and somebody merge with you and you not spend the rest of your life trying to find out where they are. So she had to understand that's a heavy, heavy control of understanding and staying focused, etc. And you need to understand this is why we have to get healed before we step into the 21st century. Millions and millions of people are not going to make it. Please hear me. Not because that was not their destiny not to make it. It is because of the ignorance and the unwillingness to learn universal laws and live by them that will be their own judgment and will cut them off. Because as the atmosphere is changing, our body has to be able to take the new atmosphere. The air is changing. And so you have to understand that you have to be able to take the new elements that are now present. So you have to be willing to drop the old lifestyles. You have to be able to activate the genetic information. And first of all, you have to be willing to occupy your time in space. Every time a person is born, the earth shifts to make a space in time for that individual. So when you sit up and say things like you have to compete with somebody, you are totally out of your mind. You have no concept of the fact that you can't even fit into somebody else's space and time because your genes, your body structure will not allow you to. So you want to get busy competing and thinking you got to be in somebody else's space and time, see what kind of life you're going to live and how you're going to get knocked right out of it. Because you come here with your own gift and talent that it is expected of you to elicit on this planet. And the idea that you have children in college and a car and a house note to pay is inexcusable as far as absolute laws are concerned. But I can imagine they're like, this is incredible. Somebody's talking about they can't be on purpose because they still have 5 more years on a job that they ignorantly spent 20 years on. I mean, that is just really too tough as far as universal laws. And when they come through, believe me, it is going to be awesome. So now this is going to be a very, very interesting test for the melanin dominant individual who has all, but who has nothing at this point. Is the willingness for them to connect themselves up again to universal law and order and be able to literally leave Egypt. To literally leave this madness and take their proper space and time. And so that means that if you know that you're on jobs where you're not included in the 5, 10, 20-year perspectives, then you know that you have no business there.
That's right.
Can you do that and not feel that your whole life is going to crash down to the ground? Because your working has nothing to do with your existence. Because you're not paying for air, sunshine, plants. Those things basically cannot be bought. They've not been able to be manufactured. So I ask that this be a time, and it's not coincidental that we know we've just had a lunar eclipse.
That's right.
Okay, that you begin to really think about why you have the belief system that you have. When you think these thoughts, do you automatically feel uncomfortable? Because you have to understand, it's not the experience of the people outside of you, it's your thoughts that keep you at bay with yourself and in discomfort. If you don't have money, why not? What's the difference between you and Trump? He defecates and urinates just like you do. So the only difference is your state of consciousness. So now the sister was up here asking for support for your future. I mean, that's ridiculous that she even had to make the statement to me. Because that is part of your heritage to want to know that wherever you are deciding deciding that you've done enough, that now you have some individual that can take it on. There's no way that you can survive and not be willing to invest in your future. And so the idea that somebody has to beg you for that, again, should give you an indication of how out of your mind you are. Individuals who have demonstrated over and over again their dedication to wanting to make available to you the information, they should be, after your basic needs are taken care of, the first people you pay. The first. Because they are demonstrating to you what they are doing with their time and money. That's what's so obvious. I mean, it's before your very eyeballs. Dr. Bodice, you got 4 Rolls Royce out front. Because now if you don't have 4 Rolls Royce out front and a big huge mansion over here behind this building, then you know what he's doing with the money. I can't believe that anybody would even come in and discuss his prices, anybody else's prices, if they're not exhibiting that. Because the point of it is he should have them. And you should want him to have them. Because if he's helping you keep your body in alignment and that's what he's able to exhibit, then you know that's going to be your gift. So we need to stop the foolishness and talk about something that's too expensive. Especially when it deals with something so sacred as this altar, known as the physical body. Something so sacred as information that you know you don't know. Okay, that's the first thing you should want to pay for. And begin to start rechanneling our money to use for what we have already available to correct our condition and build our institutions. Thank you. I was asked to bring some things to your attention. As I said, I have a tremendous amount of information that I'm slowly putting into a translated form for you to glean. This is the first book that's ever been written about minerals and vitamins for the melanin-dominant individual. It's awesome to recognize how much of melanin is already vitamin. There are certain vitamins that are already incorporated in melanin molecules that you don't need to take. So this was really kind of a pun on the one-a-day vitamin because it is not adequate for the melanin-dominant individual. So you need to stay out of the store buying those Centrums and those one-a-day vitamins, etc. They're very dangerous. Because not until you understand basically who you are and how melanin works, you are causing yourself a lot of problems. Okay? So, yes, they're next door. So this actually gives some information on the ethnicity of the African. And for mothers, please stop raising our future incorrectly. Our children are the most mature children on the planet, and they grow very rapidly. The African child is an adult at age 14. Now stop it. Now when I was running the indigent clinic, I recognized the little sisters that I had to deal with here that were 13 and 14 years old, on a physical level, were living out their destiny. But because their mother didn't know who they were, obviously didn't know what they had, these young women had been downloaded no information. By the time an African child is 7 years old, they must start intense education and discipline so that when their hormones finally kick in at full level at 14, you have a functioning adult. And this is the danger if you constantly sending your kids to an educational system that actually is using their own or another race's cultural standards to educate your kids. It takes 21 years for a Caucasian to mature. 21. So therefore, what we do is inset severe mental retardation in our children. When I was at U of M, I was going to a primary medicine lecture, and the gentleman was giving a dissertation on stress urinary incontinence, which was something before that was never really heard of in African females. But because we dogged our bodies out with so much meat and flesh, and we have so many tumors in our pelvis, we're not able to control our urine either. Because you have to understand, it's a complete insult for an adult to wear a diaper. Anytime you've got pans up in your house, you got to really look at what's happening with you. So this is a common problem when the tissues do not have melanin, etc., because they lose their elasticity. They have a different structure, a different circulatory system. So as he was saying, he showed the African sisters with their little babies on their legs. Because in Africa, there is a technique where the baby is put in a particular position, frog leg as a matter of fact, and that is when they are taught to defecate and urinate. So that's why they don't need diapers. And that's why you don't see any mothers with urine and feces running down their side. Because unless that baby is put in that position, the baby already knows that it does not release itself. So therefore, he was talking about the fact that it was obvious and that he found it very interesting that African children can be toilet trained at 6 months. So when I see a beautiful African child, 3 years old, stand up in my face with a diaper, okay, I just wish I could just really have an intense course with the mother. Because this child is profoundly, it's moving into retardation. Because this child's neurologic development was competent to be taught how to be potty trained at 6 months old. And this was a Caucasian that knew this. Now again, why don't you know this about your own child? See, this is what's so awesome. So here we have an individual that can actually start controlling their body at 6 months old. Okay, how are you going to tell somebody who physiologically and endocrinologically at 14 years old to come in at 10 o'clock? It's curfew. That's ridiculous. Okay, and that's why they get upset and just go off. Which means that's why that our young men are now drug off to jail. Okay, and Europeans are talking about, oh my goodness, these are horrible type people. We have to now inoculate them because they have something known as the fearless gene. It's ridiculous when you understand that this is because the mother basically did not install in this gentleman, who was definitely going to be totally capable of deciding his own destiny by 14 years old, what the deal was. So come on, sisters, stop it. You have to come out of these institutions on these jobs that you're prostituting yourself on before you continue to kill this race. 1 out of every 3 women has uterine fibroids, which is a representation of how you misuse your creative energies. You're constantly going to jobs that they don't give a damn about you and has nothing to do with you. You still do not get a shoe out of that fits, a dress that fits, or anything else that you need. You're constantly in servitude to a race of people who do not care. And it's your problem because you continuously give them the energy to continue not to care. If you're busy, believe me, taking care of your stuff and providing for yourself, the interaction that you would have with all other races would be totally of a different level. But you cannot have respect if you do not give it to yourself first. I mean, it looks ridiculous for you to try to squeeze yourself into European clothes that don't fit. You have seen how ridiculous you look?
Yeah.
And it's an insult for you to go up there with an African body and the Saks Avenue and try that mess on. And then dog yourself out about your hips and thighs being too big and a whole bunch of nonsense. When it ain't even made for your structure. They tell you right on the thing where it comes from. We need to stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Come on, let's get it together. At another time I want to talk to you about the miscegenation principle. Because that's the second issue that you have to get in tune with. Because the Africans here in America are very interesting. Because truly we do have it all. Because we have a multiplicity of genes in us that if we don't know what they stand for, what's on them, and how to activate them or to put them at rest, that others can activate genes and behavior in us that we have no control over. So you better get a grip on what the values are that you look at on TV and what you listen to on the radio and what magazines you're basically attracted, because these forms of information do activate genes. Thank you.
The next workshop, you spoke about
on Monday I'm doing a workshop for women because, again, I'm very distressed about the statistics that are being circulated in the scientific community that the African race here in America will be extinct by year 2050. Is any of my people here? Okay. Is anybody people? Okay, because they have the information. Okay, but this is for women and especially women with uterine fibroids. And this is this coming Monday on the 16th at 6 o'clock. It's on Thomas Avenue. Next door where the books are available. You can get that information. But also, too, please come to the sexual workshop. It's really disturbing to me when I hear African women talking about they don't understand their men and that there's a war going on between men and women. Because the flesh on every man's body is your endometrium. How can you talk about you don't understand that you gave birth to? See, and the issue is that you don't understand yourself. So we've got to deal with all of these levels of information so that we can recreate a high-quality life. Okay, and if you're going to save and work for anything, again, do it for the information, please. Thank you.
Actually, Southwest Philadelphia, between Baltimore and Whitby, between 57 and 56.
Okay, we're gonna be taking the information, Dr. Jewel and her assistant here is gonna be taking the information over in the next building because we have another workshop coming up. We wanna give, Dr. Jewel Pookrum another round of applause.
On the Sexual Wisdom Workshop, my partner, Dr. William Knuckles, this is an awesome brother. And one of the things that we've often talked about, which I felt very inadequate about dealing with in my sexual workshops, is dealing with the men's issues. Of course, you know, I'm an excellent technician, okay, but being a technician and dealing with how these truths apply in a culture and in a sociological level is like night and day. And so therefore, obviously, for men's issues, a man has to really deal with that. I have no idea what it's like to have a penis, how you have to deal with that on a day-to-day basis. I don't know what happens in the men's bathroom. I don't know any of that, and all of this is tied into the actual health of the men. And so Dr. William Knuckles is awesome. He is a physician of sports medicine. Also, he has a master's degree in suicide. And we've talked about how the African man in America is definitely on a suicide trip. If it's not from the fact that he's working on a job that he has no business, to the fact that he's on outright drugs, etc. The reason for this has to be identified, and it deals with primarily the African woman, but it also deals with the lack of knowledge of the godship that the African man is in. Thank you.